I always felt like there was this deep, deep yearning for something more. And I didn't know what the more was. I mean, I thought it was like more love or more money or a better job or better body or whatever it was that, I was externally focusing on at the time. But what I understand now is a yearning just to be more aligned with my sacred heart.
Everybody's learning. Everybody's growing. Everybody's got to start somewhere. How the wise one grows. How the wise one grows.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to How the Wise One Grows. Today, I am so excited to share our guest, Lynsie Mckeown, with you today. She just gave me a thumbs up because I said her name right. That's like my little fear with this. But before we get started, I know that I personally need this. We're going to take a few moments to just land here together and have a bit of a grounding moment and breath. So wherever you are, just start to notice where your body is touching the earth. And just let the body become heavy. Let the earth hold you and lift you up here. Inhale, fill your chest, fill your belly with air. And exhale, open your mouth, let it go. Two more like this. Inhale, the chest, the belly expand. Exhale, let it all out. One more inhale. And exhale. And you can slowly start to draw your awareness to your surroundings, maybe noticing the sights you see, the temperature of the room. And now we're here. So I'm going to share Lynsie's bio with you and introduce the wonderful human that I get to look at on screen right now. Lynsie is a spiritual woman empowerment coach, a lineage yoga and meditation teacher, a certified neuroencoding specialist, TEDx speaker, and live radio show host of Women Thriving Unapologetically. With over 17 years of personal inner work and spiritual growth, combined with more than 14 years of professional experience in the healing and transformative modalities, Lynsie weaves an intricate web of compassionate and insightful support that enables women to honor their unique pace of healing and transformation, so that they move in sacred flow with the divine, becoming an expression of innate joy, beauty, ease, and freedom that resides within. She leads powerful, transformative mentorship programs for women who want to experience the freedom and abundance that comes from diving deeply into the sacred abode of the heart. I just want to sit with those words for a moment. That's all that I need right now, I feel like. So thank you so much for being here and sharing this space with me and with those tuning in.
Thank you for having me and just listening, really taking in what you were saying. Oh, it almost brought tears to my eyes just hearing my own story.
Yeah. I think we seldom hold space for ourselves to just pause and reflect and really feel proud of ourselves for a moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I felt that when you were saying it, and I was like, wow,
Well, you are amazing. I'm so glad that you got to feel that in that moment.
Yes. I agree with you. So rarely do we, especially as women, take pause and celebrate ourselves and all the work that we've done and where we are in this moment and all that's to come.
Yeah. Something I remind myself of a lot when I hear that inner critic hounding in, as I try to pause and be like, What would Holly a year ago think about where we are today? And that's like been such a grounding thing for me of like, okay, Holly a year ago, Holly 2 years ago would be like, yeah, you're killing it. Like you're doing great. It's okay.
Absolutely. We forget about how much we've accomplished in our healing and our transformative and all of our journeys until we take that time to pause and look back on what we've done. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
it's really been really difficult to do so. And I started this practice where I would have a journal and I would just write down every single month, everything that that I accomplished, and not just, for my work and professional life, but just also for my spiritual um, healing journey, as well as just all the little things that I was able to accomplish that month. And then I would go back and look at it and be like, oh my gosh, that was a lot.
Mm.
And inevitably, every time that I was writing it down, I was thinking, this is not much. I haven't done much. But then if I gave myself 6 months or a year and then I went back, I was like, wow, good job.
It's such a great practice to hold. I think that's something I'm going to kind of sit with. I've been trying to do that for like my weeks. If I'm like, man, I'm so tired today. Like, what's wrong with me? You shouldn't be tired right now. And then trying to reflect on like, well, actually, a lot of stuff happened last week. My
Mhm.
body might need to just like recover right now. And maybe what we need right now is a little bit more rest.
Or a lot more rest.
Or a lot more rest. You are so right on that. Well, I would like to hold some space now for you to introduce yourself. And I can't resist using this line that you sent me of how you went from doing lines in the back of toilets to being a spiritual empowerment coach.
I was like, did I really send that to you? Okay, let's just start with the big stuff.
Let's just go right on
Let's
it.
just go right in. Oh, so yeah, that was you talking about thinking back of how where you were and where you are now. And it doesn't feel like that long ago,
Mm.
even though, and at times it does feel like it was forever ago, a whole nother lifetime ago. And you know, things don't happen overnight. They just don't. So I can try to encapsulate everything in a short amount of time for the purposes of this podcast, but I want everyone to understand that this took a long time and a lot of consistent effort in order to make a change such as that, where I'm out partying and in a bathroom doing lines on the back of a toilet while I was at work because I was a bartender. So yeah, it's great. And then to a place where I am now, where I am, supporting women and finding their true power and presence in the world so they can live an authentic and fulfilling and joyful life. And so it took a lot of trial and error and a lot of help. I needed a lot of help. And so
Mm.
with that, even on the darkest nights, I always felt like there was this deep, deep yearning for something more. And I didn't know what the more was. I mean, I thought it was like more love or more money or a better job or better body or whatever it was that, I was externally focusing on at the time. But what I understand now is a yearning just to be more aligned with my sacred heart.
Mm.
And so with that, you know, I would follow all the little breadcrumbs that would come up. And they felt like little teeny tiny breadcrumbs, but it does take a willingness to try new things and to ask for support. So I tried, therapy. I tried all types of meditation, all types of yoga. I tried life coaching and spiritual mentorships. I mean, I did crazy cleanses because people would say, oh, if you do a cleanse, you're going to have some, spiritual enlightenment. So I would try it and wonder later on, like, what did I just do to my body? Um, and the
I feel
efforts
like
for more
that's a
clarity.
relatable one.
Yeah. Oh, you're going to get clarity if you do this. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I'll do anything for clarity. So it just took a lot of, willingness to follow those breadcrumbs and just to keep doing the work. I mean, and just following um, the support that was coming up for me at the time and not push it away because of the fear. And the fear was always there, a lot of fear. And I mean, I remember, this one distinct time when I had gone out and I'd already started getting some support through a spiritual community and had started meditating, but I was still in that transitionary time when I was still out partying a lot. And I remember I had gone out and I didn't really want to do the things that I was doing, but I did because it was a habit and that's the people I was hanging out with and surrounded by. And I remember coming home and laying in my bed and I had so much cocaine in my system that like sleep was going to be impossible. There's nothing I could have done to fall asleep. And in that moment, I just remember being just, wallowing in my shame and my disappointment and just my own self-criticism, judgment, and fear, and just not knowing like what to do and just feeling desperation in that moment. And so I just started praying, and I don't think, I didn't feel like it was a prayer. I never feel like I'm like praying. Like we hear people say these beautiful prayers. I was just, calling out for help in that moment. And tears are streaming down my face. And I was so, so lonely and just wanting something, some sort of support or sign. And then I felt this wave of calm come over me. And before I even had a moment to reflect on what was happening in that moment, like, okay, I felt this huge relief happen. I fell asleep and I slept the whole night. And there's just no way that could have happened considering what I had consumed that night. And that was really just a moment that kind of opened my eyes that, okay, there is some support out there. There is something that is guiding me and supporting me, even in those really, really dark times. So I felt like, okay, that's a small awakening. It doesn't all happen at once. It's just these little breadcrumbs that come along, these small awakenings, and you just keep going and you just keep going and you just keep going and listening to the pull that is your heart's guidance system. And it takes a lot of time and consistency to develop trust in it because most of the time I wasn't trusting at all. I was just afraid and just, but yet still at the same time I was willing to try anything.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that so openly. And there's so much there that I want to sit with. I think I really want to point out how you, well, one, this element of the breadcrumbs. I think we often neglect them and we don't know maybe how to identify them. So I feel like that example of you gave, like something that can seem as simple as like I was able to fall asleep, I was given the gift of rest, is a deeply profound breadcrumb that sometimes we might just like brush it under the rug and not pick up that breadcrumb and explore what was there. So that's a little thing I'm going to take away of is just kind of holding space to remember those breadcrumbs more and more. And
And
you go.
yeah, what I was thinking about when you said that is that, so often I wanted a big sign. I wanted the huge shift to come in to prove that things were changing in my life or to prove that the unseen was supporting me and loving me. But it took a long time to realize that's not really how it works. It's really a soft, subtle um, revealing of that support as you do your inner work and clear away the blockages that you have to receiving those signs. And so, there's have been big, support that has come in, but that's not as frequent as the small support. And like you said, the gift of rest was actually really quite huge. I needed to rest. I needed to rest my mind and to stop blaming myself and self-flagellating myself in that moment and take the rest that my body needed so that I could come back and have the moment for reflection the next day. Well, maybe it was the day after that because enough, it didn't feel so good the next day, but
Very understandable. How were you able to reflect on that the next day? Like, how were you able to open up and see that breadcrumb?
it's a good question. and sometimes it's difficult to go back to that moment because now when you look back, you're looking through the lens of all of your experience and
Mm,
all the trainings that I've done now, and I can see it differently. But I think in that moment, to the best of my recollection, it was just that there was relief. Um, and when you have relief, there's a sense of those boundaries and those barriers that are keeping you from your inner knowing can kind of come down. And that just allows you to be more open to the next breadcrumb. I don't remember what the next breadcrumb was,
yeah.
um, but I do recall that it just stuck with me. And as a sign that there is something greater out there supporting and loving me. And I've never forgotten that. With all the things that have happened in my life, I've forgotten, I feel like 85% of them. But I always remember this and I always come back to it as a reminder that I am supported and that I am cared for by the divine.
Yeah, I think it makes me think of in my life, I find when I'm in this space of like tension and criticism and like push, 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 like just I neglect that ability to see those tiny breadcrumbs and tiny miracles. And if I allow my body to soften, if I allow my mind to soften and like take away the expectation, forgive myself for all the things, and I just become open for life to flow through me, that's when it's like, and I feel like I'm personally coming out of a wave where I feel like I was like in that tense, tense, tense place, and now it's like, and now we open, and I
Mm-hmm.
can start to see things more clearly. And I think that softening is a really big gift we can give. So thank you for sharing a really like wonderful example of that.
Yeah. And, just to pull in a little bit of the brain science is that when we're in high stress and we have those frequencies of thoughts of energies that are associated with stress, anxiety, and overwhelm and criticism and judgment, the brain isn't actually able to expand outside of the box that it's in, meaning that it's always exploiting what it already knows. And so when we can relax and rest and allow ourselves to be more spacious and more still, what happens is the brain is actually able to expand outside of its box and way of thinking. And that's where creative insight comes in. That's where those aha moments come in. And that's when we can feel the divine guidance come in because we haven't created that barrier and boxed ourselves into the stories that we've been telling ourselves over and over and over again.
Yeah, I love talking about the brain side of these things. And I'm so grateful that you have light to share on that. Um, and maybe a word that I was like, whoa, I don't really totally know what that is. Can you share what neuroencoding is and some of your insight on that?
Yeah. So one of my mentors, it's a term that he's coined from his work with neuroscience and neuropsychology. And what it is, it's using neuroscience techniques to encode the brain with new patterns, new beliefs, new habits that really support us on our journey to expanding and growing into the fullness of who we are. And so you can think of it as, neuro hacks or techniques or tools that will help really capitalize on the neuroplasticity of the brain and helping to dissolve those patterns that really are non-constructive and starting to encode the patterns and the habits and the beliefs that are actually going to move you towards the more fulfilling life.
Yeah, it's so impactful. From my experience, I tend to think of like the brain as a muscle, and the muscles we work get stronger and fatigued. And if we
Mm-hmm.
don't give it like breaks, then it can't continue working as hard. It'll kind of burn out. And the more we work those new muscles and create new neural pathways, we can work through that. And for me, like mindfulness tools and breath work have really helped with that, but it's something I would love to to go deeper into. So I'm definitely going to have to touch on that with you in the future.
Okay.
You also mentioned the divine, which is something I really want to talk about today. So do you mind holding space to share about the divine feminine?
Yeah. What would you specifically like to know about her? Because she's everything.
Yeah, let's just like give a what is the divine feminine? How would
Okay.
you define that? And starting there.
Yeah, like I said, she is everything. And
Yeah.
so the divine feminine, well, first off, the divine feminine isn't separate from the divine masculine, that they are, they can't, we live in a dualistic world where we want to label everything and compartmentalize everything and separate everything so that we can better understand it. However, the divine masculine and divine feminine are part of a whole. It's just that the divine feminine um, over millennia has been viewed as not as powerful or as important as the divine masculine, which is totally false because one cannot exist without the other. And so the divine feminine, when I say that she is everything, I'm saying that from my perspective as a Tantra yoga lineage teacher, because in the Tantra yoga tradition and many other yoga traditions, see the divine feminine as the Shakti, as the energy of everything. Everything that you see, taste, touch, smell, feel is an expression of the divine feminine because she is the power of creation and creativity.
Mm.
She is what manifests this world that we are able to live in and experience. And the divine masculine is consciousness, is the stillness, is the awareness that we need in order for the divine feminine to create. And so she really is everything. And unfortunately, the Western perspective, I'm not going to say unfortunately, the Western perspective is that the divine feminine is very receptive, almost passive, and hidden, where the masculine is seen as, the visible and the what is productive. And because it's visible and productive, and because we're human beings and we associate value with what we can see and taste and touch and produce, there's this idea that the masculine is better in the Western perspective, and that the receptivity, the what's hidden for the divine feminine is seen as less than, because we can even see this in our culture where, okay, if I'm receiving more rest, there's some shame around that. We are always like congratulating everyone or putting them on a pedestal if they're working 16 hours a day, or they're making a certain amount of money, or they're producing something that we've associated a value to, where we undervalue the rest, we undervalue the self-care, we undervalue the stillness. And so we can look at it twofold, from the Western perspective as well as from the Tantra yoga tradition perspective. Either way, the divine feminine has been misunderstood and undervalued in both, well, mostly in the Western, but it's really the divine feminine in the Tantra tradition is really seen as all that is and all that will support you in creating what you desire most in your life. But we can't do it without the conscious awareness of the divine masculine. Does that answer your question? I feel like sometimes I go on a tangent.
No, I loved every second of that. I really appreciate how you began that explanation as the divine feminine and the divine masculine aren't separate. And it takes me back to, this might be a little Holly tangent for a moment, but like when I was in college, I was in the Curry School. I was going to become a teacher. I was like, yes, elementary school is going to be so much fun. And I remember sitting in class one day when they were teaching us like foundations of how you teach a mind to learn things. And they taught like you have to put things in boxes. You have to put it in these boxes. And that's where all knowledge will stem from as children and human brains develop. And I just sat there baffled because I was like, that's not how the world works. And from a young age, we're trained to teach people to see things in these boxes. And to me, that's very harmful way of thinking. And that was when I dropped out of the Curry School like a week later and was like, not for me. That's not the route for it then, because that's just not how I see the world, and I don't want to continue to project that. So I think it sounds like your practices has really held space to like see beyond the boxes that our culture trains us to see, and to honor like the wholeness of the feminine and the masculine in us all. I think we tend to neglect that a lot.
Yeah, and so
And
many people want to say, well, if you're a man, then you have more masculine energy. If you're a female, you have more feminine energy. And what we lose sight of is we have both. And when we are our most, living our most expansive selves and really truly thriving from a place that's not pushing or over striving, but in flow and with ease, it's because we're really attuning to both and we're honoring both. And, the reason that I really focus on the divine feminine now is because I've ignored her for so long. And so I'm trying to bring presence to her more in my life so that my life can start to become more easeful and joyful without the overwhelm and the anxiety and the overdoing that was taught and followed for, most of my life. And honoring her, what I'm doing is honoring those parts of myself that have been neglected, have been viewed as less than by me and by society, the parts of me that were dormant for so long. And so when that part comes alive, then I feel more balanced.
you're honoring your wholeness in that,
Absolutely.
For me, yoga, translates its union. I've been more seeing it as like this oneness and wholeness. And how can we ever truly like love ourselves or be deeply connected to ourselves or the world if we are continued, as culture teaches us, to like neglect these parts of ourselves, the softness, the darkness? We have to be able to receive all of it to be whole.
Absolutely. And that is part of it. Like, this life is a gift, all of it. The hardships, the beauty, the ease, the struggle. And so when we can see it that way, then we can have some softening around it and we don't have to, put those barriers up or push it so hard against it. And it doesn't make things easy, but it makes it more easeful.
Mm.
And one part, that, one of my greatest mentors said one time in a talk he was talking about the divine masculine and divine feminine. And he said, one way you can view it is that the divine masculine is like that steady rock for the divine feminine to stand on and be able to grow and create and manifest things, manifest worlds. And we see that, whether you're in, a same-sex relationship, a heterosexual relationship, whoever holds the most, masculine energy in that, the divine masculine energy in that relationship is that rock. And that can go back and forth. It can fluctuate.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you honor that and you don't run away, like you don't go back into some conditioning that, oh, to be a man, I need to run off and hide in a cave and I can't be there for the fluctuations of the female cycle or emotions or all that comes with creativity and growth. When you stand steady and you can be that foundation, amazing things can happen when you allow her to come through. And so that happens within us. It happens within relationships. It can happen within the dynamics of our community. If we can honor that and be stable as the divine masculine so that the divine feminine can be honored and allowed to do what she does best.
I'm so grateful you put that in that way, like both in relationship and with that self relationship, because I think I have a tendency to like go into that like create and neglect the steadiness that we need to be rooted to grow into those spaces. And I think it's definitely an interesting thing to explore in partnership and relationship too. That's something like, you know, I'm newly married. I'm trying to figure out how to do this in a way that feels fulfilling to me and not like I'm falling into a mold that's not really authentic to what kind of life I want. And it takes a lot of like hard conversation and that acknowledgement of like, all right, maybe right now you're the rock for this, so I can grow over here, and then now I'll be the rock for you here, so you can like create over there, and not maybe getting so hyper focused on it's going to be one way forever. There's going to be a lot of waves of it.
Yeah, and that's the way that, that in itself is honoring the divine feminine, allowing her, the divine masculine can provide the structure so that she can flow and be safe to do that. And so we need, in relationship to be honoring each other so that we can hold each other in a container that's not confined, but is able to move and flow and adapt, because that is the divine feminine. She's always growing. She's always adapting. She's always wanting to expand. And to confine her in a box is really diminishing our own light and our own capabilities.
Yeah, I'm really starting to see partnership more and more as like, not, it's my job is to like learn and grow and to become my most authentic, fullest, wildest me, and like, and to hold that space for you to do the same and vice versa. Like I want to be held to grow in that way, and I want to hold you to grow in that way, and that's the best we can do at the, and if we're not our most authentic selves, then what are you doing?
Yeah, and to find someone that can be that for you and to be able to move with you and to allow you to grow or allow you to be the rock is really beautiful. It is absolutely, it doesn't mean it's, you're not going to have arguments or
Yeah.
hard conversations, but it makes it so much easier to have those conversations when you know that person really can hold that space for you and allow you just to, like you said, just grow into who you really want to be.
Yeah. And trusting yourself to do that. I think
Yeah, that's a
that's
big one.
yeah. Well, how did you first encounter the divine feminine in this concept? What was that experience like for you?
I mean, it wasn't like a big reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I didn't have the writing across the sky or the big sign. It was just, I can't, through a really, really hard transition out of a relationship. I was in a relationship with someone that I really thought was my person.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up having to split up because he actually wanted to have children and I did not. And that was just absolutely 100% clear within me. And that's, you can't compromise on that. So it was really difficult to end a relationship where you feel like, oh man, like I really love this person so dearly. And this is the best relationship I've ever had. And yet I cannot compromise this. I just can't. And so it took a lot of trust to let that
Mm-hmm.
go and in that, but it was so heartbreaking. And but what's interesting, if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have been wanting to flee uh, Charlottesville, where I live now. Um, and so
Where
I
we
remember
met.
exactly. And so there was a training in a New Year's Eve retreat up at the Himalayan Institute in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. And there was a teacher that was teaching there that I had had been on my radar for a while. And I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to be here for New Year's alone again. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went, and it was just an eye-opening experience. I had no idea that the lineage of yoga that he taught from was a tantra-based lineage. And I studied with him. It was such a profound experience being there and the practices and what they did to awaken me in a small way, but a very profound way, that I realized like, okay, I want more of this. I've
Mm.
never experienced yoga or meditation or breath work like this before that has had such a big shift on my neurology. And so I started studying. And then it took me, I don't know why I wasn't putting the pieces together, but it took me years to realize, like, wait a second, Tantra yoga is a goddess practice. Didn't know that. Don't know why I didn't know that. I mean, I might have heard it. You know how sometimes you hear things and it doesn't land, but all of a sudden it started to land because the practices were actually starting to open me up and awaken me to that part of myself that had been asleep or ignored. And I was also doing simultaneously doing more healing work so that that transformation could start to happen, because, healing and transformation can't happen independently. And then I realized, a couple of years ago, that, wait a second, like the goddess energies really want to come through, because the goddess energies encapsulate the divine feminine. And I was never like, people throw that word around all the time, God is this, God is that. I'm like, well, that's not, I wasn't relating to, the long, luxurious hair and having the draped gowns and all that, a lot of makeup or whatever this is how I was associating, like seeing people portray goddess when they were putting things on social media. And I was like, that's not me. I'm like athleisure.
Yeah. I wish that people could see what we are wearing.
I know, I got big fuzzy socks on right now.
Yeah.
And so, but I didn't understand what the divine feminine was. And then when I started going into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's been present with me all this time and I didn't recognize it. I didn't recognize her. And then when I started to recognize her, I started to recognize myself more. And
Mm.
then I started to become very intentional with inviting her in and doing specific practices that invoked her energy and her presence in my life. And then that's when things started to really change. I mean, I had the foundation there from all the other
Mhm.
stuff I had done. And I was just at that ripe point where I could open my eyes and allow her in, because, you know, like I said earlier, is that I just had been, you know, conditioned, not intentionally by my parents, but, it's more from society and our
Yeah.
culture saying that, the masculine is more valuable. And so I was associating divine masculine with masculine and divine feminine with feminine, or being female.
Yeah.
And so I had just had to, re-educate myself on that so that I could allow her to come in and not push against her and say, no, like that's just too, I hate to use the word woo woo because it's not woo, but, I was kind of still using that vernacular. And, but it is that invitation. I mean, she was already there, but when I really invited her in, she could come in more fully. And so that's when things really started to open up. So, and just, an example of, when things are falling apart, a lot of times it is that redirection to and onto a path that you're meant to go, which you wouldn't have the courage to do otherwise.
Yeah. I Have you ever read The Alchemist?
I have.
One of my favorites. I try to reread again and again, but there's a line in there that it's like it'll try to break you on your way to getting there almost. And that's when sometimes it's meaning you need to maintain the course, and sometimes it'll try to break you when you're almost there, you got to keep going. And then sometimes it's you have to lose everything to step into the life that is more authentically you. And that's horrifying. That's
Yeah,
a
isn't it?
yeah.
Well, I mean, if everything was super easy and we're sitting back on the couch and so comfy in our lives, I mean, why would we go take a transformative workshop? Why would
Yeah.
we, you know, go to therapy or to get, some counseling through some spiritual mentorship? I mean, like, I'm fine. I don't need anything right now. And so, but we are meant to grow and expand all the time. We're not
Mhm.
meant to remain stagnant. And so we need things to kind of come in and shake us up sometimes if we're not being conscious.
Yeah. 100%. How did you start inviting the divine feminine into your life? How did that go? And I'm sure there are like some practices that need to be, you know, deeply studied and go through real things, but is there like a seed that
Well, I guess I mentioned before, it's like, oh, I was already doing them based on the practices that, of Tantra yoga, not realizing that they are actually practices that help awaken you to the divine feminine. Um, but when I decided to focus my attention on it and to learn more, I started to bring in some goddess practices. And what that means is that, you know, there are many, many different types of goddesses in the tradition of yoga. And because, I mean, think about the universe in itself, or spirit, or God, or goddess, whatever you want to, however you feel more comfortable saying it. So it's so vast. Like, she is so vast. And if she's everything, how can we understand everything? We can't even conceptualize that. So, but there's different energies that we can relate to. We can relate to prosperity. We can relate to love. We can relate to spiritual awakening. We can relate to this wanting to evolve. And so there's different goddesses that encapsulate that energy within her. And so when we focus our attention on one goddess that we want to, let me back up one second, is that the goddess themselves hold all of that energy within her, but she has a capability, like when you focus on her, to help awaken those energies within you, because she is you and you are her.
mm-hmm.
And so you can focus on a particular goddess and invoke her through mantra, sacred sound. You can invoke her through sacred geometry, through contemplation and meditation. And by inviting her in this way, what happens is that you are starting to shift your own energies to align to hers. And so that therefore you start to resonate at that same vibration. And then you become naturally that magnet for whatever she represents. So, say, for example, love and prosperity, a particular goddess for that, and you're invoking her and you're, raising your frequency to meet hers, you become that magnet that's going to draw in more love and more prosperity into your life. And because you can't be at a level of lack and scarcity consciousness or fear based thoughts and have this idea that you can actually attract love and prosperity at the level that you want and or be able to maintain. You have to be at that same resonance to attract it and to be able to hold on to it. And so that's how the goddess, practices can help us ensure that, we are able, and I don't even want to use the word manifest. It's more like magnetize what it is that we want. And then that's why it becomes easier and in more in flow, instead of the reaching outside of ourselves and chasing and pushing and grasping. It's more about, okay, I am becoming the divine goddess so that it comes to me. I become the center of my universe and things move around me and they come to me, and not from an egoic place, but from just this place of confidence and ease in who you are. And like, okay, I am this human being that houses these divine energies that I haven't been capitalizing on, right? I haven't been invoking or inviting in or realigning myself to.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of almost how we began with like that first breadcrumb. It was the softening the tension and opening up to it and inviting that goddess in. It's that part of yourself is already there. It's just, it sounds to me like part of that practice is softening and opening up to it so it can flow through you, and not necessarily like denying the fear and the other things that are there too. Like, you have to hold space for those things as well, but maybe shining light on the ones in which you want to honor and grow, and they're
Absolutely.
connected.
Yes, absolutely. And then just to say, like, for women who do associate with the goddess energy of, I don't want to say there's anything wrong with, having the external viewpoint of what a goddess can look like, but not forgetting that every woman, every man has that within them. And so when we are cultivating goddess practices, just knowing that she can be fierce, she can be a warrior, she can be loving and compassionate, she can be soft and tender, she can be determined, she can be, that force that comes in and creates boundaries and can be unapologetic about that. And so just knowing that. And so you can have any shape, form, you can wear any form of clothing, have any type of hair, your color, the color of your skin can be any shade, and you are a goddess.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what your body looks like and how you identify, that goddess is in all of us.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So I want to hold a little bit of space because I know we're kind of trickling on time, but maybe is there one thing that you can leave listeners with of like how we can start tapping into this part of ourselves?
I think it just starts by this acknowledgement that, okay, the divine feminine is everything. Like
Mm.
she's everything. And just honoring that. And like, okay, now that I understand this, I can now invite her in. And one of the simplest ways you can invite her in is through breathing. There's a great sage called Krishna Makarya who said that when you breathe in, the divine moves towards you. And when you breathe out, you move towards the divine. And if in that transition of breath, say when you breathe in and there's a slight pause before you breathe out, that's where the divine is held within you. And then as you exhale and you move towards the divine, that small pause between the exhale and the inhale is where you completely surrender into that peaceful, restful place that is the divine as well. So always moving towards you, and you're always moving towards her with every breath in, every breath out. And all you have to do is just come back to your breath. And there's lots of other bonuses for doing that, right?
So many.
So many. But when you just start to shift your awareness and be like, oh, my breath is sacred. And if I'm breathing in this sacredness into my body, then I am sacred.
Mm.
And every breath I take out is a sacred gift as well. And so we just shift our perspective in that way. And for those of us that want, a more tangible physical thing that we can do, I mean, you can even create an altar at home. You can just have a space in your home where that is a place that's an anchoring point, that every time you walk into that room, you see, okay, I've created this space, this altar that represents what I am wanting to bring in or what the divine means to me, so that when I see it, I remember, oh, yeah, divine is within me, all around me, supporting me, loving me, because we need sometimes physical reminders because we are very forgetful beings, and we are very prone to go back to conditioned way of thinking, especially when we have a lot of stress in our lives. And like we said in the beginning, like when we're stressed, we stick in that little tiny compartmentalized box. But when we have that physical representation of that altar, we can be like, oh, I can take a deep breath in and deep breath out. And with that deep breath in and that deep breath out, all of a sudden our brains open up to experience more and to feel more and to have those deeper connections.
Those are such beautiful ways to shine that light of awareness on it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, I know that one of the ways that people can really delve into this is through the work that you do. So I'd love for you to kind of share space. I know you have like so many exciting things coming up. You have a radio show that's about to go live, which I'm so excited for, and your empowerment coaching and your membership program. Do you want to share about those things? And
Sure. Yeah, it does feel like a lot right now. So, but with that being said, I've learned to kind of relax into it and allow myself to be guided with it at a pace that really feels right for me and not the pushing and the overdoing doesn't feel right any longer. So um, with the Awaken the Divine Feminine program that's coming up, this is for women to drop into a sacred container where we'll meet once a month and we'll actually learn about a new goddess and her light and her shadow aspects and how they're playing out in our lives and what we want to bring in, how to invoke her and activate those energies within us. And then so that you can start to see those shifts within you and start to bring those energies into your life so that you can be the magnet for each one of those goddesses. And so you'll have a whole month to delve really into the practices, and we'll have a community where you'll start to create bonds with other women on the sacred journey. We'll also have goddess circles, which means that it's just a time for group coaching with me and also to connect with the other women that are in the group and hear how their practices are going. We're going to have amazing guest speakers come in, women from all different lineages and backgrounds and expertise to share on all different types of topics relating to the goddess or to being a woman in this lifetime in this culture. And so I'm really, really excited about offering this because I already have so many women that are jumping into this opportunity. And as I see the women coming in, I'm like, wow, this is going to be a really powerful, awesome group and journey. And so I'm very honored to hold that space for them. And of course, if people don't want to do the group, they can just connect with me and we can do one-on-one. Sometimes we do both, and you get the personalized, undivided attention of me who's supporting you pretty much every day on your journey for the time that we've agreed upon to work together so that we can really delve into what it is that you really want to create in your life, what might be getting in the way of that, and how we can take the steps to dissolve those barriers of patterns, habits, thoughts, and then start to activate and align you to your divine aspects that will help carry you forward in great ease and abundance.
Sounds like that neuroencoding comes in
It
with that
does.
one too.
Oh,
All
yes.
about that.
It definitely comes in. So it's a really beautiful mix of Eastern and Western technologies so that you feel really deeply supported.
Holding the wholeness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when does your radio show launch? This might come out before or after that.
Yeah, it launches on May 19th. It's called Women Thriving Unapologetically. It's a very bold title.
Love it.
But
We need to be bold.
yes, and it has a softer meaning behind it as well.
Mm.
But yeah, it airs on May 19th and it's through the Voice America Empowerment channel. So you can find it there.
Well, thank you so much for holding this space and so openly sharing these parts of yourself and holding space for others to explore that too. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's always such a pleasure. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun.
As we close today, I am going to share a little breathwork practice similar to the one Lynsie described to honor that divine feminine that is everywhere, is all things. So take a moment to let yourself land wherever you are. If it feels safe, you can gently rest your eyes. Feel where your body touches the earth. Notice some part of the body that you can soften. Perhaps the shoulders or the face. Inhale, fill your chest, fill your belly with air. Hold. Exhale, allow the chest and the belly to slowly sink back. And pause. Inhale, hold. Exhale, pause. Inhale, hold. Exhale, pause. Inhale, hold. Notice that divine in you here. Exhale, pause. Surrender to the divine, this space of peace and rest. One more time together. Inhale, hold. And exhale, pause. You can continue to breathe in this way if you choose. Or you can surrender to the natural rhythm and intuition of your breath. And I'll leave you with a few words I wrote in reflection to today's conversation. She lives in you. She lives in me. Open your eyes to the divine in this air that we breathe. You can slowly bring your gaze back to the things around you. Notice your natural breath. And I hope you find moments to notice the divine as you move through whatever comes next. Thank you for taking time to listen to the wise one inside of you today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to help it grow. Until the next time, let's keep taking it one breath at a time.